It's really fascinating. They're all supposed to follow the same LCD. They don't.
I'm not sure if I can say this. What we do is we submit predetermination.
There's going to be a different dance depending on the music. It's the same thing for provider relations. So you kind of have to figure out, what does that dance look like? Hey there, welcome listeners to another episode of the Offsite Team Podcast. Today, we embark on a journey into the realm of insurance provider relations. Man, I can't stand working with insurances. But what we're going to do today is we're going to be uncovering its significance as well as unveiling the secrets behind why it's so important. So even if you're a small mom and pop DME, you can still be very active in working on insurance provider relations. So first, what is provider relations? It's just like any other relationship. So first, April, you have a relationship with your husband. Is it all contractual, or do you guys actually go on dates, or what's that kind of like to have a good relationship with your spouse?
There has to be an agreement, like we have to go on dates, but from time to time, just like insurance and provider, there's also the misunderstanding, miscommunication.
Are you saying you have occasionally had a misunderstanding with your spouse?
Yes.
You know, just like that, we can also have misunderstandings with insurance providers. Like what will happen is you said this DPD was all we needed, but you actually need chart notes, or this is this. It's just like any other relationship. And this is why a good relationship with a provider is vitally important. And any one relationship, if it was just you telling your husband what to do or him telling you what to do, that would be a horrible relationship. It should be give and take. So this is why the importance of insurance provider relations is vitally important. This would be like stakeholder agreement. So what we're doing is we're building solid provider relations, and it ensures that all stakeholders, this would be like the DME, the respiratory company, but also the insurance side, the healthcare providers, and the patients. So it makes sure that we're all on the same page. So take a really complex piece, such as like a ventilator or a group 3 wheelchair. Those are really hard to get covered, but they're actually really easy as long as you know the rules. We have done so many of those. It's really simple. Like, it's not that hard to get a group 3 wheelchair. You know, you need to get a prescription, but then you have to have a PT/OT evaluation that has to get signed off. You have to have the quote. We know exactly what it is, but it works because there is stakeholder alignment. We know exactly what is required. Other what's would be like effective communications. So this would be good open channels of communication. This allows for clarity, dispute resolution, and understanding policy changes. So we are recording this podcast in October, and typically at the end of the year, they start telling us, hey, going into 2024, there are going to be some policies that change. For better or worse, but we have to know what they are. Just like any other agreement, we have to know what these look like. Number 3, what is this? Client trust. You've got to trust your insurance. Now that's kind of hard. I'm just saying you have to trust your insurance. Well, I'm not going to go into that. Maybe that's another podcast episode. But we need to, a good provider, there has to be some sort of reputation that, if I need this wheelchair or oxygen or ventilator from the insurance, they're going to cover it. But we need to know what that looks like. And typically we have fee tables and what that looks like. But if something happens, you need to be working with someone that knows how to jump through the hoops that are required. So client trust. D would be operational efficiency. So this would be streamlined relations to contribute to faster claim processing, policy updates, issue resolutions, and this drive overall efficiency. So from a billing standpoint, you do a lot of training with our billing team. What would this look like? Provider relations to help with operational efficiency. What does that look like, April?
I'd say the most important is that our billing documentation should know what the LCDs are, because if we don't know it, then we're not sure what to look for. I mean, we can try by submitting prior authorization, but then again, chances are it might get denied. So we want to make sure that we have a clear communication, we have a clear copy of what we need in a specific document.
And what I have found fascinating is I don't bill. Billing drives me nuts, but we have great billers. My wife, who runs our rehab team, it's really fascinating. Even though they're all supposed to follow the same LCD, they don't. Molina is different than United, which is different than Medicaid, Washington Medicaid, which is different than Medicare. You have to kind of know, it's like, how do you dance? Well, if you think dancing, whether you go to a techno rave or a country line dance, there's going to be a different dance depending on the music. It's the same thing for provider relations. We have to know the dance. And the cool thing with the Offsite team, they know the dance. Whenever we get a denial, we're like, okay, why did we get a denial? What happened? Oh, in this insurance, this is how you have to do it this way. So there has to be operational efficiency. And then last, what are we talking about? This is market expansion. So strong relations can lead to collaborations, partnerships, networking opportunities, allowing insurance entities to expand their market reach. So what does that mean in layman's language? Insurances, I wish it wasn't this way, they're for-profit businesses. They want to make more money. They are very willing to partner with local DMEs if you're going to get them something cheaper and faster. They're all about that. And because if someone, let's say, for example, we all have seen, or hopefully we have all seen the numbers, like for someone that needs PAP, if someone who needs a CPAP machine doesn't get it, they are way more likely to have to go back to the hospital. So the numbers state that say, hey, for every CPAP that is prescribed that someone doesn't get, it's actually going to cost that insurance company $5 to $7 extra for every $1 they would have paid for the CPAP machine. So they want to work with us to save them money. And it's a win-win-win. So when we're talking provider relations, that's what it looks like. Now let's think from a business standpoint. We want to process very clean claims. The insurance company wants that too. Why? Well, if we get denied on our end, we're going to appeal it. Well, every time we appeal it, it costs us money, costs us time. It also costs the insurance company money and time because they have other resources going into it. So a lot of times what we have done, and we have, for our clients, we tell them a little bit of our Scooby secrets, but kind of what this is, hey, there are some secrets to working with this insurance provider. And this is how we do it. So you kind of have to figure out what does that dance look like? Because if I'm great at break dancing, but this person's great at country line dancing, we might both be great dancers, but we can't dance because they're two different kinds of dances. So this is like Medicaid versus Medicare versus third party. There can be kind of a different dance that takes place. So that's kind of the what on provider relations. Now, why is this important? Well, first, if you know how to have great provider relations, it is a competitive edge. So there are all sorts of DME competitors. And believe me, for those of us that are smaller, I guarantee the big guns out there, the Aprias, the Lincares, that you name it, they're coming after your business. So we have to have a competitive edge and know who to talk to in these companies. We know that and we can kind of help you with that. Second, this is also important because it helps with risk mitigation. So I think it was either 2 podcast episodes ago, I was telling the story that I'm still ticked about. I messed up on the paperwork we had for our wheelchairs and it cost our company $50,000. So if we know how insurances work, it's going to cut down on your risk mitigation. I have known several DME companies. They were great companies. Well, they weren't that great. They went out of business. But I've known several really big companies go out of business because they had bad relationships with insurance companies or they were not following their rules and they got taken out. Next is financial growth. So if we do this properly, it's going to allow for efficient operations coupled with market expansion opportunities, and this can drive revenue growth. We've had several instances where we're having decent business with one insurance and we had no idea that insurance all of a sudden went statewide or grew and we had most of their business. So even sometimes it works really well, have great relationships with small insurances, because if they ever do grow, it gives us that opportunity to expand. And so also in terms of financial growth, another reason to have great provider relations is long-term stability. So this basically means if you have great relations with insurances, strong relations foster loyalty. So what do you know about that, April? If we have, obviously anyone can be a provider for like Medicare and Medicaid, but even some of the third party, what do you know about those strong relations?
Well, strong relations would be like if you pass the audits, then chances are you will not be getting another audit in the following.
And you're exactly right. And you understand that. So, and they know that too. And if they know, hey, every time we have an audit from the Offsite team, they always pass. Well, they know we're good. They're not going to look as closely because they know we have all of our documentation. And, their call centers, we know they're not all that big. It was a couple, I'm in Washington State. And it was like the second year I realized there was only one person processing all wheelchair documentation for Washington State Medicaid. That was it. one person. And I was really frustrated because we kept missing and missing and missing. And we didn't have the proper documentation. It was really funny, but we finally figured it out. And our paperwork wasn't that much better, but we literally went from every claim being denied to every claim being approved. It was crazy. Well, she understood. We knew what we were doing. And I would sometimes actually it wasn't big, but we might have missed like one small thing. She would still approve the claim for us. Why? She trusted us. And I wasn't asking for someone who could run a marathon to get a power wheelchair, but she understood that we knew what we were doing. So there is that, that's why this is so vitally important. And then last is the long-term evolution. So for example, collaborative efforts with providers. It really leads to innovations and advancements in the insurance industry. So where have I seen this? Faster claim processing using certain advancements. Lately, we've seen, I'm having one of those moments. What's the new diabetic? It's the continuous glucose monitor.
CGM. Yep.
Yeah, the CGMs. You're seeing that as well too. So if they trust you, you will get something like that. We've also had, and I'm not going to say this on the podcast, if you want to call us, there's actually, I can think of 3 or 4 other areas. We have huge relations with some local payers and frankly have made really, really good money on it. And we've also taken really good care of their patients. And so there are a lot of those out there as well too. You don't always just think Medicare, Medicaid, third party. There are a lot of other supplemental payers out there that you can really use to help with your DME, but as well as the patients as well too. There are a lot of funding that is out there. So now what's interesting right now, so we're recording this in October. This is probably going to come out in November. I can talk about what things look like at the beginning of the year, but you'll have to give me a call on the phone because there are certain things that happen with the health exchange every single year that if you are not doing, your business is losing out. Because things change every single year, from new insurances going on to new or old insurances that used to be really big, all of a sudden disappearing. Local DMEs have to be aware of what's happening. Now, also, we all know about price tables. We know about, hey, Medicare pays this much for oxygen, whether you're rural or not rural. But then all the other insurances go off that. So we have to be very aware, what's going to happen at the end of this year with the omnibus bill. And so what that means is, are we going to get $142 for oxygen, or is it going to go down to $50 or up to $70? We have to be very, very aware with that. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot we can do with that except for, keep contributing to AA Home Care, which is the local DME's advocacy group. And they do great work in Washington for us. But at the same time, we have to be aware what is going to happen with all those third-party claims. Now, what's interesting, I don't know if you know this, it was just a few months ago, for the very first time in history, Medicare Part C enrollees passed Medicare Part B. Now, April, do you know the difference between those two, or do you want me to talk about that?
Go ahead, I'm listening.
You're like, so for those of you who don't know, Medicare Part B is your typical run-of-the-mill Medicare. Now, everyone who is eligible for Medicare, so for example, like my parents, who are senior citizens, you can choose to go Medicare Part C instead. So this would be, you're going to get a Medicare plan from United Healthcare, or one of the Blue Crosses, or you name it. Now, typically, my parents think it's great. Oh, it's so much cheaper than Medicare. I'm like, well, that's because you guys are healthy, guys. Some of those plans, like the United Healthcare's, please reach out to me. I haven't heard great things because what they'll say is, oh yeah, we're going to provide all these little things, but if you ever have, you have cancer, we're going to make you jump through all these little loopholes. So you have to be very aware of that. And in the case, what we've seen in Washington State, a lot of our Med Advantage plans, they're doing crazy things such as on a K1 wheelchair, they will not pay for that K1 wheelchair unless you have a physical therapy evaluation. Well, let's make it even worse. So they'll say, yeah, you have a wheelchair prescription. We're not going to pay for that K1 without a PT eval. But then they've dropped their PT eval reimbursement so low, there's no one in our city that will perform a PT eval. So what they essentially have done, and shame on you, company, we all know who you are, CHPW, what's going to happen is essentially you have prohibited people from getting wheelchairs. Now, I happen to have some Spidey secrets, and we have figured a way around this. And because a lot of it is understanding, if we know the rules, if you understand how insurances work in your state, you can appeal those. So today, in my sync with our rehab team lead, she's like, yep, we've been appealing it and we've been getting them covered now. So this is where, even if you have kind of a non-working relationship with a provider, and if you know how to work the rules, you can get around these for the benefit of your customers, which is absolutely amazing. Or other insurances, let's say, for example, they will only work with one company. Drives me nuts. But if that company is not in your city, you can appeal for exemptions where they will work with you. And we can talk with our customers on how to do that. So you might not have a contract with, let's say, Molina or Humana, you name it. You can still get some of that business if you have the right channels to go through. And this is what we do with a lot of our offsite team. We're like, okay, this is the game that you're going to have to play with this insurance to get this covered. And it is definitely possible to do. Now let's talk about, how do we do this? Number one is curiosity. So in the old days, it didn't work very well. I would just get mad and yell at people on the phone. So may you learn from my mistakes. Don't yell at people. Try to be as nice as possible. So what you're saying is, I have a wheelchair. And yes, that's right. So you're saying that it's not going to be covered unless I get a physical therapy. Yep, that's what we're saying. But I happen to notice that there are no PTs in my city. Oh yeah, that's a problem. See how I'm being curious? Well, then what do I do? Then they're like, I don't know. And there are ways. So by being curious, we can constitute, well, how am I going to go through the insurance process? And really, the provider relations and working with providers, typically the person you're talking to, it's not their fault. It's either the higher ups, or I would even say sometimes, I actually don't even think it's the insurance's fault. They just come up with a rule, but they don't realize this is how things really are on the ground floor. And not all of them. Some of them, I think, truly are not nice. But sometimes I think they just make mistakes. We all make mistakes. So being nice to them about that, they're more willing to work with you. So just understand and, be curious when working with providers. Any other thing you've thought with working with providers, April? We don't want to give away too many secrets. Call us for that and we'll tell you some of the secrets. Or better yet, have one of our offsite team members and we'll give you all the secrets on working with certain insurance providers.
Yes. I'm not sure if I can say this, but usually what we do is we submit predetermination, and then from then on we're gonna get a copy of what we need. So that's the
absolutely. So it's a very first time working with an insurance. File it off, and then they're gonna tell you what works and what doesn't work. Absolutely. No, you can totally say that. In other words, once we have a solid grasp on the what and why. And then you kind of figure out the how and how to cultivate this. It really, really is going to aid in the amount of business that we can offer people. Also, what happens is when our customers call us saying, hey, I need a power wheelchair. I'm not going to tell them, hey, you're going to get it tomorrow. I'm going to let them know, hey, the process is going to be on the very fast end, maybe 3 weeks, and on the slow end, 3 months, depending on your relationship with the doctor and therapist involved. Now you come in asking for a cane. Hey, with the prescription, hey, we can give that to you today. It really depends on what you're working and working with and what you need. And, we've said this before, the biggest source of discontent in the United States today is unmet expectations. So what we want to do is we want to give great expectations to our clients, to our providers, and so things are met. So if you're intrigued, if you're wondering how our offsite team members can redefine insurance provider relations for you, then reach out. April would love to talk with you. I'd love to talk to you. And hey, we are going to embark on a journey of discovery, transformation, and growth together. So, hey, thank you much, April. And until next week, thank you for joining us today on the Offsite Team Podcast. And remember, in the world of insurance, relationships are the bedrock of success. Nurture them and watch wonders unfold. So go ahead and give us a call, email us, or reach out on offsiteteam.com.